Good morning, Patrick Smith, coming to you mobile with the mobile morning manna. Coming to you in the back seat with my chauffeur and lovely wife, Shannon, is driving. We're on our way to Gallatin, Tennessee this morning. Shannon's beautiful children live in Gallatin, my stepchildren, and we're going to go to church at Long Hollow Baptist. That's Shannon's church from Gallatin, and we're going to visit and have a great day, have a great Sunday. That's what grandparents do, right, Shannon? I'm a grandparent. Some of the other kids may or may not be having kids too, so we'll see. Eventually, right? Everybody does, right? There's no secret there. So, morning manna, welcome. I've been thinking about what to tell you guys. If you care, if you don't care, that's good too. Why do I do this? Again, reading the Bible every day is what I've come to depend on. I need God. I need the start. I need to know the assurance that God is there, and that the choices that I'm making, I'm applying God's word. I've been asked, do you read other things in the Bible? Yes, I've read the whole Bible a couple of times, a few times. I've read some parts of the Bible hundreds of times. Proverbs is one of those that I've read excessive. But I've read Genesis excessive. I've read Matthew excessive. I've read Ephesians excessive. So there are some that I do read more because I feel like there's more in it, more for me. But also the reason that I'm doing this is for my grandchildren, great-grandchildren. One day they'll look back and they'll be able to hear their grandfather reading the Bible. I'm a little teary-eyed, but we're going around a curve, and I'm holding this just ever so slightly. It's pretty stable. Shannon's an excellent driver. She's not talking. She doesn't like being on camera, audio or video. So, without further ado, here we go, chapter 2. My son, if you accept my words and store up my commands within you. I'm going to stop right there, right at the beginning, because whenever I see if in the Bible, there's something that's being led up, and for me, I've got a note here that says sacrifice freely. So it's a condition if you accept it, and right off the bat, here's it's an if then kind of a thing. So here we go. Moving over, flipping the page. I won't have to go back. Listen closely to wisdom and directing your heart to understanding. Furthermore, if you call out to insight and lift your voice to understanding, if you seek it like silver and search for it like hidden treasure, then you will understand the fear of the Lord and discover the knowledge of God. For the Lord gives wisdom, from his mouth come knowledge and understanding. I'm sorry, I blew through some punctuation there, and blowing through punctuation in the Bible, doesn't matter what translation that you have. If you're reading the Hebrew Bible, if you're reading the King James Version, if you're reading, doesn't matter. If you blow through the punctuation, it will throw everything awry. So I'm gonna pause just a little bit. So he's, again, this is an if you do all these things, he's leading up to the possibilities. So, for the Lord gives wisdom. There's that semicolon that I blew through. From his mouth come knowledge and understanding. He stores up success for the upright. He is the shield for those who live with integrity, so that he may guard the paths of justice and protect the way of his faithful followers. Then, so here's the then, so if-then statement. Then you will understand righteousness, justice, and integrity. Big pause, big punctuation change. Every good path. So those are the paths that if you're not on these three paths, righteousness, justice, or integrity, you're on the wrong one. Those are the only three. So apply those to your path and you'll see. For wisdom will enter your heart, and knowledge will delight you. Knowledge also, if we back up, I think I'd read this already, but something else knowledge will do, give you much grief, because with much knowledge comes much grief. But with much knowledge comes a lot of opportunity for delight too. Because here's the next big thing. Discretion will watch over you, and understanding will guard you. You don't get discretion nor understanding without experience, or, and most importantly, let me not say or, and the wisdom, and somebody to kind of explain it to you. Not kind of, God's trying to, always. It will rescue you from the way of evil, from anyone who says perverse things, from those who abandon the right paths to walk in ways of darkness, from those who enjoy doing evil and celebrate perversion, whose paths are crooked and whose ways are devious. It will rescue you from a forbidden woman, from a wayward woman with her flattering talk, who abandons the companion of her youth and forgets the covenant of her God. For her house stinks down to death, and her ways to the land of the departed spirits. None return who go to her, none reach the paths of life. So follow the way of good and keep the paths of righteousness. For the upright will inhabit the land, and those of integrity will remain in it. But the wicked will be cut off from the land, and the treacherous ripped out of it. Wow, that's a long path in there, a long passage. It talks in there about, in verse 15, whose paths are crooked. Repeatedly, there's only one person that can make someone's path straight, or straighten out crooked things, and that's God. So when you see crooked path, or people on a path that's not straight, or that whose path's winding, or whose path is something, they're on the wrong path. Again, it's a reference to you don't have to oversell it. Don't be overly dramatic about how crooked your path is and about how you got it all figured out. There's only one person that can straighten crooked things. There's a big part in here about rescue you from a forbidden woman, from a wayward woman with her flattering talk, who abandons the companion of her youth and forgets the covenant of God, of her God. If again, so all of this at the beginning is the if, and it's laying out an example. A wayward woman can be just that. It can be the actual, like this whole thing, like if you're not a wayward woman, none of it applies to you. No, a wayward woman is also, it could be something that's broken off from the main group that seems enticing, that seems like something to follow. It could be something that provides great pleasure. It could be something that to you seems like the right way to go, but if without the guidance, you could be caught off guard and cut off from the rest. So again, he's beginning to build up into some of his sayings, but to know that the beginning is the fear of God. And then if you don't have that, reading the rest of Proverbs or a lot of really any of the Bible, you're going to get mixed reviews in your own head. So that is morning manna, Proverbs chapter 2, and I am going to jump over here to Ecclesiastes, and I got to thinking about this as well. Like, why do I like Ecclesiastes? It's written and told by Solomon as the teacher, and I imagine Solomon, with all of his wisdom, with all of his knowledge, I bet he was smart. I bet he was, he amassed like the biggest fortune at the time. We always talk about Solomon's wisdom, Solomon. But Solomon was the son of a king. He had access to everything imaginable. Imagine if you had access to everything. Imagine if the Titan Stadium was yours, your dad's, and every time there was something there, you could be there at the Titan Stadium. Imagine what you'd learn. You'd see a lot. You begin to put in perspective that Solomon was a human being. He was a real man. And he died. And then when I read this, I think about Solomon having some epiphanies. And that's why I like him, because I can tell that Solomon was real. In the words of Ecclesiastes, in the way that he puts it, it's a reflective state, but also a state of, it's not prophetic. It is a man that has seen a whole lot, and he took the time to write down for you and me, inspired by God to do so. I'm inspired by God to read it to you, to my grandchildren that aren't here yet. And without any further ado, into Ecclesiastes and on to chapter 2. I said to myself, go ahead. I will test you with pleasure. Enjoy what is good. But it turned out to be futile. I said about laughter, it is madness. And about pleasure, what does this accomplish? I explored with my mind the pull of wine on my body. Big pause here, punctuation. My mind still guiding me with wisdom. Of course it was. He was the king, right? Of course he was wise. Punctuation change. That's interesting that's put in there. And how to grasp folly, until I could see what is good for people to do under heaven during the few days of their lives. I circled under this next passage. There's so many references to I, my, me, mine, so on and so forth. So again, that's how I know this is personal to Solomon, that he's trying to convey to his grandchildren the significance of the foolishness. Just straighten up and follow my lead. I know I may have not done. He was probably drinking a lot of wine. Here we go. Listen, check this out, starting at verse 4. I increased my achievements. I built houses and planted vineyards for myself. I made gardens and parks for myself and planted every kind of fruit tree in them. I constructed reservoirs for myself from which to irrigate a grove of flourishing trees. I acquired male and female servants and had slaves who were born in my house. I also owned livestock, large herds and flocks, more than all who were before me in Jerusalem. I also amassed silver and gold for myself, and the treasure of kings and provinces. I gathered male and female singers for myself, and many concubines, the delights of men. So I became great and surpassed all who were before me in Jerusalem. My wisdom also remained with me. All that my eyes desired, I did not deny them. I did not refuse myself any pleasure. For I took pleasure in all my struggles. I like how he says all my struggles. That putting all my struggles there, it's like instead of I took pleasure in all of my happiness, he reflectively looking back, he's like, I mean, I got through it. Like what? I mean, I did some stuff. That's kind of what he's saying. When I considered all that I had accomplished and what I had labored to achieve, I found everything to be futile in a pursuit of the wind. There was nothing to be gained under the sun. Then I turned to consider wisdom, madness, and folly. For what will the king's successor be? Like, I like how he says that he considered, because I'm not saying I'm King Solomon by any stretch, but trying to discern between, is this wisdom? Is this madness? Or is this just straight folly? Because it's, when you're out front, sometimes when it's time for me to relax, it's time for my staff to work. And that can be something that's difficult to discern. So it can be, is this madness? Is it folly? Or is it wisdom? So now he changes his tone though. I'm going to back up since I paused there. Then I turn to wisdom, madness, and folly. For what will the king's successor be like? He will do what has already been done. And I realized that there's an advantage to wisdom over folly, like the advantage of light over darkness. The wise person has eyes in his head, but the fool walks in darkness. I love that one. I'm going to read it again. The wise person has eyes in his head, but the fool walks in darkness. We all have eyes in our head. The wise person uses his eyes for more than staring at pretty women, for more than staring at the desires of his life. He uses his eyes to observe throughout all of his days. A fool's just walking around in the dark like a pinball, bouncing around from bumper to bumper. Yet I also knew that one fate comes to them both. So I said to myself, what happens to the fool? Whoa! What happens to the fool will also happen to me. Why then have I been overly wise? And I said to myself that this is also futile. For, just like the fool, there's no lasting remembrance of the wise, since in the days to come both will be forgotten. How is it that the wise person dies just like the fool? Therefore I hated life, because the work that was done under the sun was distressing to me, For everything is futile in a pursuit of the wind. I hated all my work that I labored at under the sun, because I must leave it to the one who comes after me. And who knows whether he will be wise or a fool? Yet he will take over all of my work that I labored at skillfully under the sun. This too is futile. So I began to give myself over to desire concerning all my work and what I had labored at under the sun. I got over here to the side. Poor me. Poor Solomon. Poor Solomon. Who's going to do all... I'm just going to work for all this. Who's going to do it, you know? Well, when there is a person whose work was done with wisdom, knowledge, and skill, and he must give his portion to a person who has not worked for it, this too is futile and a great wrong. For what does a person get with all his work and all his efforts that he labors at under the sun? For all his days are filled with grief, and his occupation is sorrowful. Even at night, his mind does not rest. This too is futile. There's nothing better for a person than eat, drink, and enjoy his work. I've seen that even this is from God's hand. Because who can eat and who can enjoy life apart from him? I think he's reconciling some of this as he's leading in to, you know, more of his in-depth. Again, he's the futile. He's beginning to realize the futility is that God's in control. God allowed him to succeed his father as king. God allowed him to experience all those things so that he could become wise and lead great people. Let me finish up. I'm almost done. I have seen that even this is from God's hand, because who can eat and who can enjoy life apart from him? For to the person who is pleasing in his sight, he gives wisdom, knowledge, and joy. But to the sinner, he gives the task of gathering and accumulating in order to give to the one who is pleasing in God's sight. This too is futile in a pursuit of the wind. That's Ecclesiastes 2. Solomon's trying to be the teacher. He's trying to rectify his life and trying to apply, trying to seek wisdom, and separate the wheat from the chaff. Know that God's in control. Happy Sunday, everyone. Have a great day, and take care. Bye.